It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My two CEO guests today are Francesco Balli and Ignacio Garcia-Menocal, co-founders and co-chief executive officers of Grove Bay Hospitality Group. They founded the group back in 2010 and currently have successfully launched an array of chef-driven restaurants in the Miami area, 9 in total, and bracing to launch another 5 by the end of 2020. The two gentlemen have known each other since they've been 15 years old, went to the University of Florida and achieved their accounting degrees, and went on to Florida's International University to achieve their master's. Francesco and Ignacio, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having us.
Well, this is great. As I said in our little introduction, this is the first time we've had co-CEOs, and I know you guys have known each other for a real long time. So we're going to start maybe with telling you both of us, or rather have you both tell us a little bit about your early years. And Francesco, why don't you talk about you for a minute? Tell us where you grew up and what part of the country you're from, and a little bit about your early life before you and Ignacio met.
Well, thanks again, Brent, for having us on the show. I really appreciate it. Ignacio and I are very excited about it. I was born and raised in Miami. Actually, my parents were immigrants from Peru. They were born in Lima, Peru. But the family on both sides are Italian. They immigrated in 1972, 71 to California, and made their way 2 short years after that to Miami. My dad is an architect and a builder, and he came to Miami to open an architectural office that he was working at in California, and he decided to start his new life here in Miami and start his family. I have 2 older brothers that are also in the family business. The older brother is an architect and builder, followed my dad's footsteps. My other brother is also a builder, all custom homes, basically. Okay. And as I grew up, I kind of asked myself, what was I going to do? Right. They all kind of followed the family business, and so it was a big question mark for me in terms of
to kind of cut your own path, right? That's one of the things of the younger siblings. The olders typically follow in the footsteps of the parents.
And they were quite older than me. They were 12 and 10 years older than me. So I had a great sort of preview to life 10 years ahead of me. As I was 10, they were 20, and doing what 20-year-olds do, and so on and so forth. So it's been a great experience for me to have 2 older brothers like that in terms of life and everything. But growing up, my dad was always pretty much worked for himself, except for 3 years in the beginning. He worked for an architectural firm. After that, he started his own firm. So growing up, it was always a very entrepreneurial environment for me. And so being your own boss or having your own business was always something that was, for me, was going to be part of my life, but I didn't know how and when.
Right.
Yeah. So
cool. Well, we'll get to that a bit later. Ignacio, tell us a little bit about yourself. Do you also come from a family that immigrated to the U.S.?
I did, yeah. Very similar story. So my parents were born in Cuba, and they came here when they were teenagers. They moved to Miami, and like a lot of
Did they immigrate? Was it refugees? What was their
refugees?
status?
Yeah, refugees. So they came after the revolution,
60s.
like many other Cubans had to flee the country. So they came with really nothing but other than the clothes they were wearing.
Shirts on their back. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So and they worked really hard. My dad became an executive at a national bank, but it was that hard work and that dedication that he had that he kind of instilled in me from an early age, that nothing's ever given to you, that you have to work for everything that you have.
Yeah, well, you guys are great stories. First generation Americans, which is so cool.
That's right.
So you guys met, as I understand it, when you were in your teens in high school. Did you kind of grow up in the same community? Were you living nearby each other?
Fairly, yeah. I mean, we were both in Miami, and fairly pretty much our friends became friends, and we were very fortunate, frankly. When we look back, we always tell each other it's amazing, because we formed a friendship of about 15, 20 guys in high school, Ig.
Yeah.
That we're very close, and we actually almost all of us went together to college too. So we never joined a frat. We basically had our own frat.
You had your own, right?
Yeah.
Cool,
so
cool.
It was a close knit. Yeah.
And you guys were around 14, 15 years old, I think you had said earlier, right? When you first met.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it was funny because even at an early age, I was in Francesco this, like you mentioned earlier, this drive to be an entrepreneur, and he was always looking for the next business or for the next thing to do. And I was like, if I'm ever going to partner with any of my 15 friends, this is the guy.
He's the guy. That's so cool.
And sure enough,
did you guys do some entrepreneurial things when you were in high school?
I didn't, but he did, Francesco. If you want to tell him,
I was a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. I almost had a problem.
They have a program for that, I think.
Yeah.
What kind of things were you doing, Francesco?
Unfortunately, nothing really took off. But I tried to start a T-shirt company. I started importing some products from Peru and trying to sell them, and sometimes out of the trunk of my car after school. And it was a couple of few failed attempts, but always trying to start some sort of business. In high school and college, as the internet started to boom, thinking about what kind of online websites we could start. We were on the verge of maybe launching like a baby website during college and stuff. But yeah, it was a little. And to Ignacio's point, I had the same sort of reaction. In high school, I knew that out of all my friends, because let's face it, in high school it's high school, right? And college is college. Out of all my friends, I knew Ignacio was like the person that I would partner with too, because he had his head straight, and obviously had his the same core values that we shared.
Ignacio, what did you see in Francesco at that age?
Well, I just saw a drive to be successful, and no matter how many times he failed, he just kept going, and I think that's really the essence of a great entrepreneur and of a great leader, right?
Never give up.
Yeah, never give up. And I've never read a book or heard a successful CEO say that they've never had failures. Everybody has, but it's a matter of keep going. Now, I was smart enough to wait till he had all his failures
before you partnered up.
Before I partnered up. So that's the moral of the story, I guess.
Yeah.
But luckily, we've done very well together, and the company's doing great.
When you were growing up, Ignacio, who were some of the folks that inspired you?
Well, really, my father, like I said early, he really, from a very early age, he instilled in me the meaning of hard work, integrity, and responsibility. And I think that carried me through high school, and getting good grades in high school and college, and eventually through your career. Through my career. So, I would say my father.
Francesco, what about you?
Yeah, similarly, I would say my father. There was never a doubt in our household that we were going to college and masters and, moving forward, and that we were going to be successful. Like that
Pursuing the American dream.
That was not an option. My dad made it always clear to us that he came to the States for a reason. Fortunately for him, he wasn't a refugee, but Peru was not doing well at that time, and he decided to pick up his stuff and leave for a reason, right? So he always made it clear to us why he came here. So it was very, it was him, and same integrity, hard work, responsibility. I mean, those were the core of the same thing growing up, and seeing my brother right out of school start his own business just again solidified the fact that that's our destiny. That's what we need to do. That's what I need to do.
Is that where the entrepreneurial drive came from? Was it older brother, or were there other mentors or folks that you identified with in terms of pursuing the T-shirt and some of those other things that you failed at?
I think I think it came from learning a little bit about my grandfather on my mother's side.
What did he do?
So my mother's father had two older brothers as well, and I realized when she told me the whole story, I connected with him a lot because he also was the youngest of three, also similarly by 10 and 12 years older. And they came from Italy to Peru, and their two older brothers were not educated. But they worked and started a company that manufactured household goods, basically, and leather goods in Lima, and became millionaires in Lima. And they put their younger brother through school, and coincidentally became the accountant for the family, the CPA.
Huh.
Yeah, and so we're going to get to this, but Ignacio is the reason why I studied accounting. He actually I credit him with that, and he guided me because I was always a very not clear in terms of what to study in college, but when I made that connection with my grandfather, I said this must be it. So
yeah, awesome. Ignacio, were you a good student in school?
I was, yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, the expectation was pretty high, from my father. So I graduated, with honors, and I, graduated with a good GPA, and I went to a good college, and I think, I'm doing the same thing with my kids now. It's the expectation of always trying your best. And if you always try your best from an early age, whether it's in sports or whether it's in school, those habits carry forward to your professional career, and that only leads to good things.
Francesco, what type of extracurricular activities are you involved with other than your entrepreneurial events? Were you involved in sports, music, theater, other types of things?
A few things. I mean, not at school necessarily. I did. I was involved with Taekwondo a little bit when I was in my younger years. I played tennis also during college. I mean, during high school. And in college picked up golf, but I was never really a sports guy. Actually, amongst all my friends, I mean, it's the joke because I never knew what the score was of the big game, or I just didn't have an interest in it. Like I spent more time thinking about what kind of business I could start, I guess. But I actually wish I was more involved, looking back, and I'm trying to do that with my kids now too. But I wasn't as involved as most of my friends.
Well, it sounds like it was a foregone conclusion and a family expectation for both your sides that you guys go to college. Did you both go to the same university?
We did.
And did you have like an influence on each other with regards to where you'd going? I know that you spoke about the accounting direction that Ignacio inspired you for, Francesco. Did you guys talk about what school you go to, or was it just kind of a foregone conclusion?
As a group of friends, all of us graduating from high school, we all decided that we wanted to go to the same school so we can, so we can continue the friendships
stay together.
Cool. Stay together. So we ended up picking the University of Florida because it was away from home, but not that far that we could always come back in case we needed something. So, so we all went.
Now, is that the Gators? I'm trying to remember.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's the Gators.
Got it. The famous Gatorade.
That's right. That's right. That was before our time, but yeah, for sure that was invented there. But so we all decided to stick together, and we just went up 5 hours north from Miami, and we ended up in Gainesville.
And Francesco said he studied accounting. Ignacio, what did you study?
Well, I studied accounting, and I actually was the one who got him into it. But I actually studied accounting for the wrong reasons, believe it or not. And life
it's an interesting story.
Yeah, life has a funny way of coming around. So I actually wanted to join the FBI when I was in college, believe it or not. Yeah, and at the time, accounting was one of the 4 ways that you could get hired by the FBI. And then when I decided that I wasn't going to do that, I was left with an accounting degree and trying to figure out what I was going to do at the time. But so, things happen for a reason, and you just have to kind of find your way through life. And I'm so glad things, worked out the way they did. But so even though
tell us, I want to hear a little bit about the FBI motivation. What was the inspiration around that?
Just I was young, and it was one of those things that I wanted to serve my country and do something good for the country, and I thought it would be an interesting thing to do. With an accounting background, within the FBI, you would specialize in white collar crime, so so I thought that would be interesting. My dad was definitely against that. that was what he had in mind for me, but I ended up not doing that. And then I was like, well, shoot, I have an accounting degree. What do I do? So I ended up joining Deloitte and Touche, one of the big six at the time.
Sure. Yeah. So you kind of went into their audit and did your training there. Right. Cool.
Right.
What was your first job, Francesco, out of college?
It was also Ernst & Young. I went to public accounting myself. So I always admired Ignacio for many things, but one of the things I admired him about was that he had conviction about what he wanted to do, and he knew what he wanted to do. I got to school and I was like, what do I do? Like, and he helped me, I didn't have a major for probably the first year. Okay. And everybody was like, pick a major. And then it was like, I think I was in journalism, and then I was in marketing. And it was, I think, sophomore year that we were hanging out or whatnot. And Ignacio kind of made a real great case for studying accounting. But right out of school, same thing. It was, I think, one of the best things I think we did was work for one of those
strong numbers
public
background.
Accounting.
Yeah, particularly as an entrepreneur, right? Is incredibly important. Yeah, that's terrific. Do you guys, Francesco, continue with you a minute? Do you remember the first time you started managing people?
In Ernst & Young, I mean, I want to say probably the second year. Yeah, you know what's amazing, and Ignacio will probably share some experiences with Deloitte too. Is what's amazing about those public accounting firms is that from day one they treat you like a professional. And
throw you into the deep end, right?
That's right. My boss at one point always said, baptism by fire. You had to figure it out, and they gave you all the tools and support that you needed to do it. But it was always about figuring things out, figuring problems out. And as long as you moved along and showed work ethic and obviously got the job done, there were opportunities to move up. So very quickly, I would say in the second year, you started to manage people, either interns or first year staff. But very early on, it was all about being a leader. Those firms were very big in that. And I think it's a big reason why we're successful today is the core values that we took away from those big four firms.
Ignacio, while you were at a different firm, I'm sure their training and their development was very similar. What were some of the earliest leadership lessons you learned from being on the job there at Ernst & Young?
Very similar to Ernst & Young. And at an early age, I think I was 25 years old when I was when I got tasked to lead a team of 3. And that you don't get taught to be a leader. That's something that you develop. So early on, I thought, well, I'm leading this team, so I felt like I had to lead from a position of strength and of telling everybody what to do. And I've realized over time, and really early on, as I led different teams within Deloitte. And as you mature, you realize that as a leader, that great leaders lead from a position of humility and of servant leadership, and that's how I've really changed, over the years from that first time that I had to lead people.
Francesco, how has your leadership thinking evolved over time?
It's somewhat similar. It's true. The first thing you think out of the gate is, I gotta tell everybody what to do. I gotta be the smartest person in the room, and that's just not the case. The reality is you gotta lead. You gotta lead by example. You gotta lead with humility, and you gotta involve people in figuring out the solutions, right? And I think that really makes you become the leader that people will look up to and follow, because you're respecting them, you're treating them equally, you're involving them in the solution. And so I had a similar experience, but those firms also, again, a lot of the people that I worked with, higher ups, provided those examples, for us to see and go, okay, yeah, this guy's, he's been here 5 years. He's not telling me what to do. He's really involving me. He's taking me along.
Francesco, you mentioned something good, and it's important to point that out. We get mentored, and we of course learn a lot from those that manage us. But there's also folks that we work for that we go, that's probably a behavior I never want to exhibit myself. Share with us maybe a couple of lessons, and you don't need to mention any names of perhaps former bosses or behavior where you said, yeah, that was a good lesson learned because I never want to be that way.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, it's not that tough, I guess. I mean, I not at Ernst & Young, quite frankly. I have to say everyone that I ever worked with there was incredibly professional. But I was a CFO at a company that we had a lot of executive meetings with foreign, executives, let's say, and their practices were completely different than American practices. Yeah. And starting with just basic stuff like respect. And so, I think, it's fundamental to what we do. And sometimes when you hear it out loud, you would say to yourself, well, that's obvious, treat people with respect and dignity. Right. But the reality is that it's not that common.
Well, and when you see it not being displayed, it really hits home, doesn't it?
It really hits home. Yeah. And unfortunately, I was, at a C-level, listen, I'm sitting in this conference room and listen, I'm a C-level executive. It is what it is. I'm taking it. But then to your point, you see it and you're like, that's definitely not the way I'm going to be.
What about you, Ignacio?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things that I think are really important to be a leader and to be a CEO. And one of the two was actually I've kind of learned it from a bad experience. But so let me start with the two. I think as I've grown as a leader, I think to be a good CEO or a good leader, there are really two things that you have to do well. One of them is making decisions. You have to be able to make good decisions in a timely manner with imperfect information. So I always say that I get paid to make 5 or 10 decisions a day that will have a future positive or negative impact in the company. So, making good decisions is really important. And then the second one is reliability. Your team really needs to know that you're reliable and consistent. They need to be able to trust that when you say something that you mean it and that you will follow through with it. And that kind of relates back to probably the worst boss I ever worked with. He had a habit of saying or promising one thing and doing the exact opposite. And I saw the damage that does to a company. And whether he's doing it intentionally or not, it really doesn't matter, because at that point it creates a culture of people not trusting each other,
disrespect,
and also disrespect, and that's just a terrible way to go.
Well, sometimes some of those lessons are the ones that hit the hardest, and
right.
We never know what's in front of us with those types of things, but they are things that stick with us. So let's fast forward a little bit. I know you guys kind of went down a similar path with different companies in accounting. Both of you kind of went into finance positions. What brought you back together? Tell us a little bit about that, Ignacio.
Well, we it's funny how our paths have kind of been very similar. Francesco was a CFO of a hospitality company, like you mentioned earlier, and I was a CFO of another hospitality company here in Miami. And I think one day we looked at each other, and at that point, we had quite a bit of experience, and we kind of said, hey, why don't we stop making money for other people and kind of do this ourselves?
Yeah. Were you guys in restaurants at that time, or was it hotels? What? Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Restaurants. Yeah. We're both in the restaurant business.
Were you competing groups?
No. Francesco was in the airport concessions, and I was more on the street side part of it. So we just decided to kind of start this company from day one. We started with a mission statement and with core values, and we kind of took everything that we have learned through all the years of experience that we liked and that we didn't like some of the bad experiences that we talked about earlier, and say, okay, that's not what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to build our company. And I think that was super important for us now that we're 450 people to build a culture and our core values early on, so they can carry us forward.
And that was Grove Bay, correct?
That is Grove Bay Hospitality Group, correct? Yeah.
Francesco, did you invest your own money? Did you guys kind of pool funds? Did you go to outside investors? How did you kind of get started with this venture?
So we were fortunate to be blessed with a great group of investors that are also local guys that also went to similar schools and similar backgrounds in our community.
Some of the same group of 15 that you guys knew back in high school?
No, not the same age. They're slightly older than us.
Older.
A little older, but mostly in real estate development and just real estate holdings. Probably about maybe 5 to 10 years older than us, depending on which one you look at, but all great guys. And we came to them with this business plan for one restaurant, and it made sense, and they obviously looked at our background and all the pieces fit. And they decided to take a chance on us, which was great, and then fortunately it's a testament to us and to our overall organization, that they kept funding us throughout our growth, and they've been great partners as well, in the sense that, we always had it in our control in terms of the business, but there's always investors that love to get more involved than they should or want, or whatnot. These guys really had a huge trust in us, and we were local guys. So we did that for the first restaurant. We ponied up some money of our own as well, part of my investment was also at that time I was with this airport concession business, and I'd been there just under 3 years, but it felt like 6, because we took the company from basically nothing to $200 million in 3 years, and I was ready for the next thing. And when Ignacio and I were talking about opening a restaurant, I jumped. Awesome. I was ready to do it. So my time was sort of my investment, because obviously I couldn't just get paid the same salary that I was making at that position, but I was okay with it because I felt like we were going to do big things.
And that's an important thing to note, Brent. That we both took a huge compensation cuts from from being in companies and being a salary to kind of when we went over on our own. I mean, it was a big leap of faith, but again, we had faith in ourselves. We had faith in our experience that we could do this.
Francesco, Ignacio talked a little bit about developing core values in your mission. How'd you guys go about doing that?
I gotta merit Ignacio with a lot of the credit for it, because I could say I read books, but I wouldn't do it justice to what Ignacio reads. Ignacio reads tons of books, and I read a few here and there. The ones that he tells me are absolutely amazing, but he reads so much, and I think it was a combination of books that he was reading about, particularly Simon Sinek
he's fantastic
about why. And Ignacio kind of led the charge in terms of saying, we need to establish some core values of this business, and really set the tone from the mission statement. And it's funny because at that point we had a mission statement, but once we looked at it from the Simon Sinek eyes, we realized what our mission statement was more about what we do, more like the result. It was, something traditional, right? Become the premier restaurant industry group of the Miami, and it was like, when you read it out loud, you just kind of realized that it was really the result of what we wanted to do. It wasn't why we do it every day. And so we sat together and really thought up of one, and we landed on enhancing people's lives every day, one person in one neighborhood at a time. And that's why we get up in the morning, right?
Yeah,
is to enhance people's lives. And then after that mission statement, there was also core values. Those core values were there from day one, which were based on providing exceptional hospitality to our guests, people focused, which has to do with, obviously, with our team members and how we make them a focus within our organization. And then community and corporate citizenship, in terms of not just cutting a check to support the community, but actually putting time and effort into it. So we do at least 2 or 3 community events every year involving whoever wants to participate. Feeding the homeless and processing food at Feeding America and things of that nature. And then the fourth core value really is performance. But we believe that if we take care of the first 3, performance will take care of itself. So,
Awesome.
so if we provide exceptional hospitality to our guests, if we remain people focused on our team members, and we support our community, then the dollars will be there.
Ignacio, as co-founder and co-CEO, you guys are the culture, right? You establish it and you nurture it. Tell me a little bit about what you personally do in building out and nurturing your company culture.
That's a great question, because one of the things that we found is when you're a small company and, we had 2 restaurants and say 100 people, it's a lot easier to be able to touch people one-on-one, and get the message out. As we've grown very rapidly over the last few years, and we're now up to 450 people, and we'll probably be in the next couple of years, we'll probably get to around 700 or so.
Come on, double that.
Yeah, double that. So getting that message out is a lot more difficult, and that's one of the struggles, that we're doing. How do we touch all these people? And we can't do it physically. It's
Sure.
impossible. There's not enough hours in the day. So we're always trying to get creative, or think about, okay, how do we spread our word, right? How do we get our message out? And that's through, obviously, training is a big part of that. We do visit the restaurants as much as we can and, talk to the folks, but we have offsite events, company events that we have to talk about. We have quarterly meetings with our management teams. We have weekly meetings with our senior management teams. So we have corporate communications. We have a like an intranet, like company intranet where everybody goes there for the training and everything. So messages from us, that's where they get posted. So we do the best that we can to still try to tell everybody, hey guys, this is what we do this, and this is how we're gonna do things. This is how we're gonna behave. This is how we treat each other. This is how we treat our guests, and this is why it's important to be a part of the community. Yeah. I think just to add to what Francesco was saying about our culture is that what makes us a little bit different is that we don't focus on the performance. We feel that if we show our guests a great experience, that if we take good care of our people, and that if we're a part of our community, then the profits really take care of themselves. So we really focus on the first 3.
Well, guys, this will be another tool in your toolbox. We've had over 70 CEOs on the program, and many of them have 5,000 employees and more. And this is a great, they use it as part of their training, right? Get to know the CEO. So
that's right.
We're glad we'll be able to add another tool there to help with your culture. But thank you. That's a great answer. And, it is something that most CEOs spend something every day on, because it is important to continue to keep that. Francesco, tell me a little bit about, what you look for when you're investing bets or making bets on people you want to invest in.
That's a great question too. And we, the great thing about having partners, by the way, is just, you get to talk a lot about all these important things. I honestly, I thank God every day for my partners, because they're big decisions. And Ignacio touched upon it, right? We get paid to make 4 or 5 very important decisions every day, and having the right partner to discuss those things and which is the right decision is important. And I think on people, as it relates to that, skill sets are obviously very important, and having the right background, et cetera. But quite frankly, we've realized that there's probably like 2 or 3 main things that we look for that really is the person really reflect the right fit for our culture as a company. So I think that's probably the most important component of it. It's almost like that gets them in the door to kind of talk to us. And the second thing is really like, do they care? Do they care about what they do every day? Because I think that's something you can't teach or train. You can't. I think Ignacio mentioned it at the Big Four firm. No one teaches you leadership, right? It's you learn it on your own.
Right.
You can't.
Sometimes the hard way.
Sometimes the hard way, right? So I think that if they fit our culture and they care, and I know you're probably going to mention some more things that I'm probably missing, and I think initiative. I think that if they just have these sort of core personality traits. It's the foundation that provides for success. Then obviously the skill set is important and all those other things, but those are things you can't really train.
Ignacio, what would you say is most unusual or perhaps unique about Grove Bay hospitality in terms of culture?
I think it's the fact that our background from the public accounting world and from these big corporations, and the culture of professionalism that we've taken from that experience, and we've applied this into a hospitality industry, or really a restaurant industry, which is sometimes known as as the Wild West, right? So so when we so it's an industry where dropping F-bombs in the kitchen and cursing at each other is very commonplace, and
not a lot of professionality.
That's exactly right. And we don't stand for that. So we've terminated individuals for cursing at somebody else. That's not okay. So a lot of people that come with I don't want to say bad habits, but with that experience from previous restaurant employers are really shocked by that, and some of them can't conform to that, and others really love that because it's a fresher breath air. It's something different. So I think that's the biggest thing that we're bringing in our culture, within this industry, and just the way that we treat and talk to each other and respect each other. That's a big part of it. How
do you interview and hire, Ignacio?
Well, we use a process called top grading, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Sure.
It's a pretty lengthy process. Good.
I'm glad to hear that. So many of my clients, kind of go on face value sometimes, and that's tough.
Yeah, listen, hiring the right people is probably the most important thing that we can do on a daily basis. And hiring the wrong person has long-lasting consequences. So we dedicate a lot of time making sure that we hire the right candidates. So with top grading is, we start with phone screen interviews to make clear which candidates come back for the face-to-face. Then we do the top grading interviews, by the hiring manager. And then if those candidates move on to the second interview, they get top graded by the hiring manager. Then the candidates have to arrange reference calls with the references that we choose, not the ones that they want to give us.
Right.
Then they have to complete an online assessment. If they pass all that, then for restaurant management candidates, then they have to do something that's called a stage, which is restaurant lingo for basically doing a one-day tryout
internship
at their position. Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's a lot of different steps. It's not easy getting hired.
So you put all your first level servers through that intensive.
They go through everything except for the stage. Yeah.
Except for the stage. Wow, that's fantastic. Good. Well, very thorough.
Yeah, it's a great process. And initially, sometimes our team members had some pushback on it because they were only interviewing few candidates, and that's what their complaint was. But we tried to explain it to them for them to understand that fewer candidates isn't a bad thing. It means better candidates. So you might be interviewing less people, but these people cut the mustard. So it helps our process. Our industry has a very high turnover in general, and we average almost half of what the industry is. It's still high.
Wow.
Our business, we say it every day. We're in the people business. We're not in the restaurant business. Everything from guests to our team members, right? We deal with people every day. So,
just for perspective again, what those retention numbers?
I think the industry IG is about 110%.
Yeah. So the industry is
over 100, right?
Over 100, and we're about half of that. Yeah. So it's
wow, that's fantastic.
It's some scary numbers.
But I mean, just do the math, right? Even half, it's a lot of people that you've got to hire every year.
Absolutely.
And you think about how many people you have to interview, and so you have to have scalable processes and SOPs in place to be able to do that.
Well, Ignacio and Francesco, you guys have been very generous with your time. One last question I'd like to ask you both, and for obvious reasons, if you can give me different answers, that would be great. But if it's the same, I know you guys kind of finish each other's sentences often. We've seen that today. Yeah. But let's start with you, Ignacio. What career and life advice would you give to someone, particularly that's looking to, get into a partnership, right? I mean, let's talk about that for a minute. What was important as you look at your long-term, 30-odd years you guys have known each other, and if you really wanted to found your own company and be an entrepreneur and do that with someone else, what are some of the key values and advice you'd give to someone looking at that opportunity?
Oh, gosh, I have a lot of things, but for somebody who's trying to look into starting their own thing, I think the most important thing early on is getting to business with the right people. I can't tell you, sometimes the deals that don't get done are probably the best deals you ever have, looking back. And if you have any doubt about the people that you're going to get in business with, then really don't do it, because you have to be able to trust them 100%, and so on and so forth. And then once that's done, it's really all about, listen, failures are going to happen. They're going to happen every day. Small ones, sometimes big ones. And it's just a matter of keeping, of just plugging ahead and keep working hard and keep moving forward and having faith in one's ability that, we're eventually going to get there.
Francesco, you've got the last word.
So, little successes. Celebrate the little successes. There's no overnight success. Anyone that tells you that is lying to you, and they're not seeing the hard work, effort, planning, failures, tenacity, everything that it took to get to where finally someone has acknowledged your success as an overnight success, and it's not overnight. So tenacity and one of our investors, again, you said not to say the same thing, but one of our investors has a great saying. It's better in Spanish, but there's no bad business with good people, and there's no good business with bad people. So
say it in Spanish.
You know how to say it better than I do. Do you know? You know how to
My Spanish is not great, believe it or not. I think it's better in English.
Made it in translation.
Yeah, basically. But it's true. The people that you get in business with is huge. But celebrate the small successes, because it's and have the tenacity to keep going.
Well, you guys are a shining example. Ignacio Garcia-Menocal and Francesco Balli, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office as co-CEOs of Grove Bay Hospitality.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.go4roi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.